You thought them rangs would start ranging, did you?
Wrong, sir. Wrong.
No. Those rings be forever ranging. And Amazon, much like Dorothy's dog, is allowing us to take a peek behind the proverbial curtain with a small series they've released called Inside the Rings of Power, which, coincidentally, was also the working title for P. Diddy's autobiography.
What did he say?
And what could we possibly find behind Amazon's proverbial curtain? Something like this, maybe?
The design team being involved from beginning to the very bitter end was very important, I think, in terms of ensuring that Peter's vision ended up on the screen, as well as the world of Tolkien.
Or maybe something like this.
The city of Minas Tirith was by far the most extensive set that we ever built.
I mean, it was just a gigantic set. It's like the largest set ever built in the Southern Hemisphere. I mean, it's huge.
The actual build at the quarry was, from memory, about 6 months.
Or maybe just something like this.
Like Elrond is
Elrond.
No, Elrond is Brat because he's unapologetic.
Elrond is not Brat.
Unless brat is short for brain tumour, I am deeply upset by this. So, will we find greatness or immeasurable disappointment? I'll let you be the judge of that as we take a look at Inside the Rings of Power.
We are such a nice group of people, and we've known each other so long that bringing the band back together is a breath of fresh air.
Wait, guys, it turns out they're just a bunch of nice people. Well, in that case, I'm sure that we, the Tolkien fans, can collectively come together and forgive Amazon for all of its desecration of Tolkien's material.
False. No way. Not this time.
I think it's fair to say the single biggest criticism that has been levelled at The Rings of Power, both Season 1 and 2, is its handling of the source material. So, obviously, this would be one of the very first lines you put in a behind-the-scenes documentary.
A lot happens in the first season, but the second season, it really feels like the gloves come off. And if you know the source material, you know we got a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned source material, because what source material is it that you've got to cover, exactly? If I remember correctly, Amazon acquired the rights to The Hobbit, The Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, and The Appendices, which cover the Third Age, and a little bit of the Fourth Age. But then Amazon, being Amazon, they proceeded to produce a TV show based during the Second Age, a period that is covered by The Silmarillion, a book that they do not own the rights to. That's a bit like going out, buying Manchester City, chucking out the football and starting a bowling club.
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
There's that sequence that spans many years, showing Sauron recovering from Adar's betrayal.
Wait, the sequence with Supron supposedly took place over a number of years. Wait, the show legitimately made it appear as though it happened in a single afternoon. Don't tell me that those fade to black moments were supposed to represent months going by. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess.
When they first pitched me the idea, I think they called it a blob.
Yeah.
And it's not really a blob, it's more like a collection of worms.
You gotta love Charlie Vickers, the guy playing Sauron, outing the writers as having actually referred to it as a blob, meaning that somewhere in the Rings of Power script there was written something along the lines of, and the blob sat in the cave for a number of years eating the bugs. Just imagine for me, if you would, that you spent more than $1 billion, not a million, $1 billion, and what you got in return is blob in a cave.
The characteristics of it are kind of beautiful, dark, sinister, and vicious.
I'm sorry, Gilgadaddy, but which part of worms in a cave did you find beautiful? Exactly. Was it the bit where it ate the centipede, or was it the bit where it ate the rat? Because, I really struggled to pick between the two.
Sauron left Galadriel behind, but she was really his partner in a lot of ways. I mean, even in my mind, I'm like, oh, there was a genuine connection between you and Galadriel, but it was there? It's always mind game.
Yeah, they were partners. Yeah, of course they were. Absolutely. Actually, here's a little excerpt from the Silmarillion that a lot of people tend to overlook. And so Galadriel and Sauron pranced through fields of daisies, holding one another's hands, looking into each other's eyes, talking about the bad weather they've been having recently, and occasionally pinching one another's bottoms. It's fascinating stuff.
Brooding, Gilgadaddy.
Gilgadaddy.
Oh, gosh.
Did you look that up on the internet?
Wait, hold on. I genuinely thought the whole Gilgadaddy thing was like people memeing on the show, but it actually comes from the people working on the show. That's even worse.
I mean, they just keep messing up. You can only tell people what they should do so many times.
Yeah, no, you can say that again.
I think that's the beauty of working on something like this, because there's so many hours of craftsmanship and so much dedication put in from the crew.
That's a very interesting choice of words there. Hours. Not days, not weeks, not even months, but hours of dedication. from the crew. Didn't it take just a little over a year to build Hobbiton for the Peter Jackson trilogy? But never mind all of that, because some of the people working on Rings of Power work from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. the same day sometimes. It's crazy out here.
Do you feel bad that you got everybody to crush on you as Halbrand, and now you've revealed yourself to be absolutely the worst?
Imagine, Tolkien fans out there, that you actually get the chance to talk directly with the cast and crew of a Lord of the Rings production. You get to sit on a nice little fancy Amazon set, probably get a decent little paycheck. And that's the question you choose to ask.
Got everybody to crush on you as Halbrand. You've revealed yourself to be absolutely the worst.
Over the last 2 years, I've seen hours and hours of interviews with these cast members, and not one of them has been asked about or given an answer pertaining to the books specifically. Not one quote or reference, not one interesting anecdote or comparison drawn from the writings of the Professor. Nothing.
Disappointed!
Now, don't think for a second that I hold the actors responsible for the majority of Amazon's desecration of Tolkien's literature. I don't hold them responsible for the writing or the costume design or the music, because that's not their job. But their job is to sell me a character. And just like the show itself, there is only shallow, surface-level approaches to Tolkien's writings to be found within these interviews. So, though they may not be the craftsmen behind this crude Tolkienian effigy that they're trying to pass off as a TV show, they are reflective of the show's values.
Owain and Sophia, if you had been in his shoes, would you have let Halbrand in?
Charlie Vickers turns up at your doorstep.
He's pleasing on the eye, let's say that.
Come in, what do you want for breakfast?
You know, it's actually not a daft question, but they do give a daft and flippant response. It would have allowed them to display not only a deep understanding of their character on screen and the temperament of dwarves from the lore, but to then be able to contrast that with one of the characters as written in the books, in this case, Anatar. What would Disa have done if confronted by the Lord of Gifts?
I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, who cares about a nuanced response to a relatively interesting question? Because, guys, did you ever consider that Sauron is actually really good looking?
Can you talk a little bit about Charlie's look as Anatar?
Yeah, so it was a whole journey to find it, really. It sort of felt like if Anatar is trying to present as I'm a messenger from the gods, he needs to have that look that sort of says, you can trust me.
Yeah, okay, because nothing says trust me, bro, more than looking like this.
Squeeze me? Oh, no, you did.
And then there was this brief, somewhat lucid moment where both the showrunners and the interviewer both unintentionally begin talking about themselves.
Everyone else keeps messing it up, and if everyone else would literally just do what I wanted, everything would be great.
Yeah, well, no evil person thinks they're evil, right?
Yeah.
Curious that, isn't it? Anyway, as we move on to the next episode, the interviewer actually asks yet another interesting question.
Muriel and Elendil have different politics from Therazon and his supporters. Can you tell us about this rift between the two camps?
Again, could have made for a mildly cerebral response, but no, the actress instead just defaults to recapping what her character did in the last season.
Miriel and Elendil have come back from essentially a failed expedition and now have to answer to and face the Numenorean people.
And after being served a lukewarm dish of "that's not what I asked for," the interviewer then immediately gives up on asking interesting questions and instead begins to ask questions slightly more appropriate to that of someone with thought deficiency.
And between Miriel and Elendil, is there something? There's a little something,
Vibes?
is there?
Why is it always vibes with these people? Why is it always that?
We found very organically is that it really goes from somebody who is dedicated to being in service to the Queen to really a shared trauma.
I hate the fact that terminology like brat and shared trauma is now common discourse when referring to a Lord of the Rings project. Tolkien, if you didn't know, served in the British Army during World War I, and he's never used the word shared trauma, so you just need to shut up. But, to be fair to the casts, Tristan Gravel, the guy who plays Pharazon, who also delivered one of the maybe two notably decent performances from the show, including Celebrimbor, actually gives a pretty based answer when asked about the moral ambiguity surrounding his character.
You've got to look at it this way. In that Numenor, they have a deceased king. They have a queen who's very vulnerable at the moment. She's been blinded. She's come back from a war that shouldn't they have gone. And you've got very powerful people in Numenor, and they will want answers and they will want strong leadership. So do you go with a vulnerable queen who followed a weak-minded sea captain who followed an elf? Or Do you go with somebody who's well aware of his own destiny? And I'd imagine you go with the latter.
Why are you so convincing?
He's convincing because he sounds like he's actually studied his character and his character's role within the world that Amazon has laid out and how that intersects with other characters. Now, I might not like that world, but that's more that can be said for most of the cast, who just seem fixated on vibes.
So a palantir can be a very dangerous tool, especially in the wrong hands.
What I found interesting, and I think we were talking about this the other day, it's like if you could see the future, like in real life, is that necessarily a good thing?
And this is yet another thing that the show messed up. The palantir do not allow you to see into the future, or as some might say, what has not yet come to pass. That's not what they do. They allow you to see in real time what is happening elsewhere, yes, but, for example, Elendil sees himself riding away from Numenor, which then comes to fruition later on in the season. But that's not what they do. It's literally in the name. The word palantir is 2 elven words meaning to watch from afar. But don't let me rain on your parade. Please, go off, Queen, about your vibes and shit.
The palantir is as powerful as the rings. You know, we're not sort of dealing in ringland just yet, but we have this object that similarly, you know, with great power comes great responsibility.
I am just not even going to address that ringland quote.
We're not sort of dealing in ringland.
Because I will not leave the conversation with a functioning brain cell. What the hell is she on? And if that wasn't enough, she then hits us with a Spider-Man quote. What?
I'm frightened and I don't know what to do. I'm confused and I want to go home.
And then on to the next episode, and I'm happy to say that things don't get much more reassuring.
Can you tell us how it felt to be back for season 2, Ismail?
You know, I've never actually done a season 2 of anything, so it was such a profound experience to know your character and just to take it even deeper.
What a way to kick off an episode. Yeah, no, I've never actually been in a television show good enough to be greenlit for a season 2. Wow, what a glowing endorsement of your acting prowess. Imagine never getting a season 2 and then the first time you're on a television show that actually gets one and it's Rings of Power. Feels bad, dude. The 2 women who directed episode 4 are then asked about Tom Bombadil, and they give a predictably aloof answer.
Tom Bombadil as a character, how do you approach that kind of, world building in a way?
What I love is him guiding the stranger, and that to me is a very important puzzle and part of the season because that really dictates where the stranger goes, which is going to be a fascinating thing.
Again, clearly uninterested. For those of you that don't know, a common question that a lot of fans have had over the years about the books is, what do Tom Bombadil and Gandalf talk about? And that is in reference to a rather open-ended excerpt from the end of Chapter 7 from Return of the King that reads as follows. But if you would know, I am turning aside soon. I'm going to have a long talk with Bombadil, such a talk that I have not had in all of my time. He is a moss gatherer, and I have been a stone doomed to rolling. But my rolling days are ending, and now we shall have much to say to one another. Curious. It's a very well-known and fabulously enigmatic statement from the books, and the Rings of Power directors, if they'd read it, could have said something along the lines of, well, one of the last things that Gandalf is written to have said is that he's going to talk to Tom, so it would be somewhat poetic and very fitting that the first person that Tom Bombadil interacts with on screen is Gandalf. But no, because of course we all have to maintain the illusion that absolutely no one has any idea that this is Gandalf at this point in the season, even though absolutely everyone knows that it is Gandalf and has known that since the start of season 1, episode 1, but never mind that, because even then, that could have been a great opportunity to leave some breadcrumbs for those who have actually read the books. If the showmakers had actually read the books too, you could have said something along the lines of, well, you know, it's said that Tom once had a conversation with someone. We don't know a whole lot about that. So we thought we'd start that dialogue. I don't know, something pretentious like that. It could have been nice. That could have been a nice little teaser to Gandalf. But no, it's got to be, well, he kind of pushes the plot forward, so that's nice. And I don't know, just talk about a lemon tree or something.
Of course, in the books, you know, he's in the forest, and here we were in this sort of barren desert, but everywhere around him is lemons.
But don't worry, because that's not the only wonderful piece of insight we get from these directors. When they were asked, you know, which area of Middle-earth is your favourite to work with, One of them said this.
Gosh, I love all of Middle-earth, so it's like really hard, but I will say this, like I really enjoyed the world of the Stoors and how Nori and Poppy got to see others living differently than themselves. It was just fun all around.
Yeah, so basically what she's saying there is, well, you know, my favourite part of Middle-earth is the bit where the people who aren't supposed to really exist yet live in a place where they were never supposed to be. Right, yeah, cool. No, based director. And when asked about the sound design of Rune, Bear McCreary, the composer, had this to say.
I brought in a Bulgarian women's choir, which is the coolest sound ever. That's a Bulgarian women's choir.
Oh, thank you, Bear. Thank you for the Bulgarian women's choir. Wow, Middle-earth was really screaming out for one of them. Shame it doesn't fit at all with the sound of Middle-earth, in my opinion. Just sounds like generic video game music, which this composer is actually quite good at making. But to invoke the sound of a desert, you went with a Bulgarian sound? Bulgaria. A country not exactly famous for its deserts. Does it even have a desert? I don't know, you could have gone like North African or Middle Eastern maybe. Also, I've read the books and I don't remember finding any Bulgarian in them. Then the second unit director, which is an odd person of the cast to interview, but whatever, he then claims that the charge, the horse charge that took place in episode 7, was the biggest stunt ever.
Best part of 7 for me was the charge. For this one, I wanted to get the cameras in amongst the horses as much as I can and get different angles, different camera positions. It's the biggest stunt ever.
Yeah. It's just not even true though, is it? It's not even the biggest horse stunt in a Lord of the Rings production. Have we just forgotten about the Ride of the Rohirrim?
I don't know, Jeff, has it? I must have missed that.
And again, at least the interviewer is at least somewhat honest.
So we have to talk about the kiss. Because as an audience member, when you went into kiss her, I was like, wait, what? What? And then it made me laugh out loud. Oh, great.
I feel like the interviewer might be secretly based. She literally just said to their faces that their emotional scene made her laugh out loud.
I just want to thank you. This is the most monumental episode of television I think I've ever seen.
And I immediately take that back. Turns out she's not based. Episode 7 was easily the worst episode from season 2, if not the entire series so far. And it looks as though Patrick McKay might agree with me. Well, that's just about as much Amazonian circle jerking as I can handle for one day. Thank you for joining me, but do not despair. We are not quite done with Rings of Power just yet. Join me very soon for one last hurrah. And as always, a big shout out to the channel members and the patrons, and of course we have the top tiers. These are the Knights of Lore: Michael Turpia, Posibon, Flunky, Daggedy69, nice, Jax, Koss, Michael Myson, Texas Lawman, ATS, Saint Nemo, Steve the Goat, the Grand Admiral, Jordan96, Patrick Coyne, and we are welcoming a brand new top tier member, ZDN94. Welcome to the channel, my friend. Allow me to knight you, Sazidi of Lore. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining the top tier. It does mean an awful lot to me. And we're also welcoming Mariah Weekland to the tier 2. I thank you as well for joining. Both of you. Thank you ever so much for joining. It really does mean a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you to the tier 1s. Thank you to the tier 2s. Thank you to everyone on this list. I appreciate all of you going out of your way to directly support me here on this channel. Thank you guys. And there we go, another day, another video. Will you join me for my next one? You absolutely should, because it will be probably the last Rings of Power video I make until season 3, which will be quite a while away, unfortunately for some. But there we go. Until then, take care, and I'll see you very soon.